Greetings and welcome back to another episode. Yes, folks, welcome back. It is Halloween, one of the best times of the year, and just as last year, today I want to share with you some of my favourite things, and that is ghost stories. These ghost stories actually come from my hometown, Prestatyn, and if you're extra good, if you listen carefully, I'll share with you another ghost story as well. Are you ready? Then I shall begin. On the seafront in Prestatyn, a ghostly white nun walks, usually on summer evenings. One man had a very close encounter with her indeed. According to Jane Pugh's Welsh Ghosts, Poltergeists and Demons, he had been taking his dog for a walk along the pavement of the sea wall between the Nova Centre and Frith Beach, for those people who know Prestatyn. When he saw the figure of a long white gown approaching him. He did not realise at first that she was a ghost, and was therefore surprised and annoyed when his dog, rather more alert, yelped loudly and ran off in terror in the opposite direction. When he looked back, the phantom of the nun was almost upon him, and the sensation of extreme cold came over him. Then he noticed that under the nun's wimple there was no face. Although he would have very much liked to have followed his dog's example, turn tail and run, he found himself fixed to the spot. He could not move. The ghost continued in her relentless stride and walked right through the unfortunate man. He felt nothing but an icy chill, and then the warmth of the evening returned to him, and he found he could move again. The nun had disappeared. Cautiously, his dog sheepishly made its return, and they continued their walk, I suspect, to the nearest pub. I used to read this book constantly when I was a kid. Actually, frankly, I still do. Haunted Clwyd by Holland. It's a very good book. I think you've listened fairly well. I think you deserve one more story. So let's look at a place called Rhys-y-Cai, sorry. On the edge of Halcyon Mountain stands Fagnacht Hall, an ancient farmhouse with a medieval foundation and a fine Jacobean staircase. The farmer and his family share their home with an occupant, perhaps even older than the house itself, the yellowed remains of a skull. Reverently, these remains are locked away in a glass-fronted case on the mantelpiece. A well-known legend states that the macabre relic belonged to a Welsh hero. Some say David, Prince of Wales, a relation to King Henry I, who was murdered by his brother-in-law while taking refuge in the hall. There had been a price on the hero's head, and the treacherous lord of Fagnacht, hard to say that name, had poisoned his cup in order to claim the reward from his English overlords. Ooh. But before he died, the hero cursed the house. He said that after his death his head should be removed from his body and put in a place of honour in the house, so that the cowardly deed should never be forgotten. After the murderer had given over the corpse to the English, and he had received the bounty, his fate was sealed. His wife, his son, and eventually his whole court left him, and he died in madness, alone in the house. His son, then retrieved the hero's head, now a fleshless skull, from its spike on the gateway into Chester, a city in the north of England, and he and his mother returned to Fagnacht Hall. The skull was placed in a casket on a table in the main hall where everyone could see it. For many years the hall prospered, but then came a period of repeated tragedy. The heir of the hall died in a hunting accident. His sister drowned in a swamp. The crops failed, and the farm animals were all found dead one morning. It was then that the casket containing the skull was found to be missing. A magician was called. He tried to end the run of bad luck. He interviewed the servants, and suddenly one of them cried out in terror. An apparition of the skull was hovering above the wizard's head. The magician told the terrified man that if he told the truth, the skull would not harm him. The servant explained that he had stolen the casket, guessing that it was filled with jewels, and when he carried it to an outhouse and discovered it was only had a skull inside, horrified, he took it to the churchyard and buried it. At once, the skull was retrieved and returned to its former position, thus ending the misfortune which had fallen upon the house. The skull was also removed from Fagnacht in the 19th century by a peevish maid, anxious to be rid of the dusty old thing. She threw it into the duck pond. That night, blood-curdling moans and shrieks echoed through the house. Doors crashed open and closed, and heavy, wretched noises were heard upon the windows, rattling and smashing. Ghostly footsteps trampled the corridors. The maid was found in her nightie, splashing about in the pond in a delirious state, searching for the skull which she had foolishly thrown out. As soon as it was found and returned to its rightful place, the creepy disturbances ceased. And the current owners tell me that that is the way it's going to stay. They intend to make sure the skull remains peacefully in its box on the mantelpiece for as long as they live there. There you go, folks. Some wonderful Halloween stories, and I love a good ghost story on Halloween itself. Hopefully you guys are having a wonderful Halloween. Whatever you get up to, do take care, and until next time, well, don't eat too many sweets. Bye-bye.